everyone, welcome to episode 64 of Formidable Opponents, a show that pits three people who have known each other virtually their entire lives in a series of conversations as we argue what is best in a variety of fun, engaging, and critical pop culture topics we all debate about. I'm Randall, and with me as always, Bob and Joseph. And this week's topic, we're talking about top 10 rock bands, and we'll be covering bands 10 through 6 on this episode. So we're going to do this a little differently, guys. Rather than doing the traditional intro, we're just going to dive into it. But first, let's check up on everybody. It's been a couple of weeks, guys. Bob, Joseph, how have you guys been?
It's been a while. It has been, dude.
How have you guys been doing?
I've been good, man. It feels like it's been a while, dude. It feels like it's been what? It's been like 2 weeks since we've actually shot an episode.
Yes.
I have another kid already. Joseph's already. No, I'm just kidding. It's been good. It's been relaxing. We've been kind of, we head back to school. We had, NFL and football season starting and a bunch of all the hectic shit that's been going on. But it's been a lot of fun. But I've been like dying to get back on here. I've been dying to do another show and hang out with y'all and have a drink and do some. And then talking about this subject, even better.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a special episode, I guess, if you want to call it that. A little bit different, but something to get us back into doing what this show since we haven't done it in a while.
So guys,
more better.
Before we dive into the dialogue and conversation about this topic, let's spend a little time catching up. What have you guys been doing the past 2 weeks? Any news? Anything worth noting?
Well, you fucking jinxed us talking shit about why we didn't record an episode last week. He mentioned this in a group chat when we were making plans with another podcast about how, these guys just need to hear that the Cowboys have been mathematically eliminated after week 1. And what happens, motherfucker?
Dak Prescott breaks his hand or thumb or something.
So thanks, Randy. Thanks for jinxing us. I mean, you got your wish.
It could be worse. Our quarterback didn't get hurt, but he might as well have been because he didn't do shit in the game anyways.
Got to check out the latest season of Cobra Kai, and
yes, I'm 2 episodes.
No, I will say this at this point. I think
Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
No, I'm just saying. Okay. No. I think one more season, and that's where it ends.
Well, Miguel's like 35 already. I mean, Jesus, how long could they go?
I think it's time to close it, to wrap it up after watching this last one.
Yeah, I think they should have wrapped it up a season ago. That's just my no, I haven't. I've been catching up. I've been watching. I saw The Patient. Have y'all seen The Patient? That TV show is tripping with Steve Carell on FX. Man, that one is fucking crazy. It's a cool show. We've been watching that and checking out The Bear. Y'all know about The Bear?
I've seen The Bear. Yeah, great show.
The Bear's cool, dude. Cooking. Thank you, Chef. Have you seen all the fucking memes? Yes. The memes are hilarious, dude.
Didn't get some heads. Yeah.
You didn't kill no bear.
What about you, Ryan? Any TV shows, any movies? You watch anything cool?
I did. I'm 2 episodes into Cobra Kai, and of course, you have to suspend all belief when you're watching this series because this is 5 years where a bunch of middle-aged guys are using kids to solve their unresolved issues.
Midlife crisis.
Yeah, they're midlife. I mean, it's just great. Go ahead, Joseph.
Well, I just wanted to ask you, at what point, since you all are both married,
we are.
At what point would your wife had said, "Fuck this, I'm out"? Like, how much longer? How much longer is Daniel LaRusso's wife going to put up?
Why is there a lot of kung fu fighting going on in my living room? Why is my table broken?
And don't get me wrong, the actress who plays his wife is a beautiful woman. There's no way in real life Daniel LaRusso could pull that woman. So if she,
he pulled a lot of great looking women.
Handsome man, what's wrong with you?
If she married you and bared your children, you'd keep her happy. And this karate stuff at some point, I think in real life, the wife would have walked out a long time ago. Let me just say that. So yes, you definitely have to suspend your imagination.
We're definitely going to do a Karate Kid episode sometime before.
We're gonna have to, dude. We're gonna have to.
But 2 quick things on Cobra Kai. To answer your question, Joseph, I think once I fucked up our koi pond, I think she'd be like, get your shit together and get these kids out of my backyard. And then I think number 2, we're watching it, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I'm only 2 episodes in, and there was this emotional scene with the actor who plays Miguel, and I was really into it, and my wife says, "Man, that kid's a horrible actor, and he should just kind of just fucked it up for me." But I mean, I love the show, but you have to suspend every shred of belief when you're watching this.
Speaking of suspending beliefs, how is it that you have a koi pond but you can't do the fucking dishes, Rand? That's what so your wife will be telling you. Oh, we have a fucking koi pond, but you can't pick up a dish every once in a while.
And to just go on with what else has been going on, I guess two things. I did watch Barbarian.
Oh, nice. How was it? How was it?
It's tremendous. Tremendous. I will say this. You have to watch it in the theater. No spoilers, by the way, but there's a lot of social context when you're watching this movie. So pay attention because it will have you talking for about my wife and I were talking about it like throughout the night because we were talking about all the connections.
You're afraid to go to sleep?
For sure. For sure. It's not that scary, but it's interesting. Yeah.
Psychological?
Really good. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's more like the traditional horror, but there's a lot of layers to it. I don't really want to spoil anything for you or the listeners, but you have to check it out. And then the second thing I want to mention, I wanted to say shout outs and thank you to our good friends, Did Not Need to Know podcast. I will be guesting on this week's episode talking about Chris Benoit. They were great hostesses. Well, hostesses kind of makes me sound like they're walking me to a booth.
Those are great cupcakes, by the
way. Hosts. They were great hosts. And just tremendous, fun people to talk to. Very knowledgeable. They're on it. It was just it was different because, you know, here we're relaxed. We're talking about great, stupid stuff. And over there, they're like talking about like really serious, heavy subject matter. And it takes its toll on you, but it's also very intriguing. They do their homework. They're both great people, Jenna and Danielle. So check them out. Did Not Need to Know podcast. I'll be on it this week. Bob has guested on it before. And then hopefully Joseph will be a guest in the coming months.
Probably December.
Something dark in December. I like it, Joseph. They'll do it only if you call it dark in December, Danny. Yeah. Again, you got to call it dark in December.
Before we get started, I want to try something a little different. I want to know what day we're going to post this, Rand, because I hear, you know, when I'm listening to other podcasts, I hear them all say happy, you know, whatever day or whatever day, and it's the day that they actually released the episode. So it's obviously not the day they recorded it.
So let's say bullshit.
Yeah, so no, I want to suspend imagination for a little bit. Randy, are we going to post this is this going to be released this Tuesday?
Tuesday, Wednesday at the late. But
Wednesday, let's shoot for Wednesday, okay?
Okay. All right, Wednesday.
So, hey, everybody, how's your Wednesday going? What's going on?
Hump day, yeah.
Fucking Monday. What a pain in the ass that was. Jesus
Thank God we're
Christ.
halfway through the week.
Can you believe that news on Tuesday? Holy fuck. I did not see that coming. So how's your Wednesday? No, I'm fucking around.
For that, I'm posting it on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So now that we're all caught up, guys, we're going to talk about a subject matter we've talked about many times here, but this time putting a little different spin on it. We're talking about our top 10 rock bands. Now, as you all know, the listeners who listen to us, when we talk about best and we put on lists and we talk about who we think is the greatest, it's all conjecture. It's all hyperbole. We know that, but that's what makes it fun. We have three very different opinions on top 10 lists. We've submitted our list to each other. It's very different. So I think you guys are going to be in for an exciting show, an interesting show, and some debates, some arguments. But before we get to that, Bob, you brought up this subject. So I remember I was sitting down. I was downstairs enjoying some alone time for the first time in a long time. I was watching Hooper, the Burt Reynolds 1978 classic, which hasn't aged well. And you sent us a text about the Watch Mojo's top 10 list. Tell us a little bit about that and why you sent that to us.
Yeah, we were, usually we discuss a lot of music on our show. So, I'll look up stuff on the internet like we do a little research. I'll watch a lot of YouTube videos and check out, whatever band or topic like it's kind of into. If we're talking about grunge or rock and roll in the 60s, I'll catch some videos and see what's up. And I just happened to come across one night. It was a Friday night drinking and watching videos. We came across this Watch Mojo's 10 greatest rock bands of all time. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. 10 greatest rock bands of all time. Watch Mojo, if you all don't know them, they do a top 10 usually basically on everything. Movies, TV shows, music, you name it, they've done it on. It's a really cool. I watch a lot of their stuff. Big shout out
we like them. We like to
Watch Mojo. Yeah, they do some great stuff. So on this list, it was Watch Mojo's top 10 greatest rock bands of all time. So of course, Friday night, having a drink, you want to listen to some music. I threw it on and they started off and I was like, whoa, no. And then they named like their band 9 of no, what the fuck? And they're going through the list and I'm like, okay, no, what the fuck? So I had to pause it And I'm like, talking with my wife about it and arguing back and forth, like, no, that doesn't work for me. So I start, okay, let me play it over. And I start typing out the list. And I'm typing out the list, 10, 9, all the way through. And then when they get to 2, right before they announce the best rock band of all time, they go through their honorable mentions. And they're mentioning honorable mention. I'm like, no, not, why the fuck would these guys be in honorable? How are they? So it was just something that caught my attention. And I was like, no, I completely disagree with some of these. So we should kind of and I said it to you, I was like, we should do this, because I think if we compared our top 10 bands to Watch Mojo's, it'd be completely different. And if we compared them to each other, they'd probably be completely different too, which we're about to find out.
For sure. And questions for question for both of you. How did you formulate your list, and what are you looking for when you placed your top 10 in the order you placed it in? Joseph, we'll start with you.
It's formulated purely on my taste, and yes, I know that's probably not going to be a popular thing, or some people are going to. I'm probably going to have the one that people are going to be like, no, and what do you mean that band, and how could you leave this band out? And that's going to come at me like big time. I know that very much so. But Watch Mojo did that themselves, and they gave some criteria which I didn't necessarily agree with, but hey, that's cool. That's their thing. It's their list, and that was basically what I did for my list, or how I came to it, to what I wanted to put on. And oh man, arranging these people and these bands in the 10, it's very much difficult. I think, to be honest with you, I think I compromised on the placement of my own list, which is kind of made me think like, well, fuck, am I doing this to please people, or am I, so? But even then, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm pretty happy with my list. So, just my own personal taste, to be honest with you.
I'm not happy with your list, but go ahead, Bob.
No, and like when Joseph sent his list, I was like, this is exactly what I expected out of his list. And I was like, but there's some good shit I could agree with. There's a handful of them I could definitely agree with. And then, of course, there's going to be somewhere I'm like, nah, I don't see him in top 10. And I think a lot of people are going to still feel the same way about us, too, especially when they see Randy's in my list and Joe and your list, Joe, like, nobody's going to agree with this, like they do with the fucking Beatles episode, and we're going to get shit on a little bit, but that's okay. Everybody's got their own opinion. It's just like, whiskey,
it's fun, and we would actually, and we'd actually love for you all to send us your top 10, or at least, so for the first one, since we're doing the top, or top 5, or if you want to go along with us with this episode, send us your 10 through 6, and we would love to see that.
What's crazy is I agree with you. The hardest part about making this is when I was.
You think you can do it? You think it's super easy?
I was like, Watch Mojo. Fuck that, dude. What are these bands? I got.
I give them props. I mean, I don't agree with their selections, but it was tougher than I thought.
Yeah, because you come up with like 6, and you're like, oh, I already have the 6, easy. This band, this band, this band. You get a 6, and then you're like, okay, 7 through 10. I just need 4 more. Okay, these guys. Oh, but what about these guys? What about this band? What about the? Well, fuck. And then if I put these, I have to leave this band out. And then that was the arrangement was a little tricky part, trying to put them all in the specific order that I wanted, or that I felt that fit. And then we'll debate this a little bit too, Rand, with you later. I know one of your picks was like this. I had a hard time debating whether I didn't want to go with an artist. Like, I was talking to Joseph about this last night. We were having a beer and talking about this. I didn't want to go with a rock artist. I want to go with a rock band. Like, I didn't want to go with the Boss, right? I didn't want to. I didn't want to go with anybody who's a solo artist, who's a rock solo artist, because I didn't feel like that fits the rock band type of thing. But it very easily could. You could make an argument that it could, and I would probably agree with it too. So it was a lot harder than I thought it would be, and that's what she said.
Well, to that point, Bob, first to answer my own question, I just went on bands that meant something to me. And I remember when you guys said,
that's similar to like what I did.
Yeah, then. Exactly.
Good. I'm glad you did that.
Just whatever was personal. Because I went through, I mean, I don't know if you'd call them more reputable sources. I went through like the Rolling Stone top 10 and some of these other Spin Magazine top 10. I went through all these other, and I just thought, well, I don't want them to influence me as much because I'm going to start mimicking their list. So I stopped looking at those things and I started formulating my list. And when you guys sent in your submissions, I thought I saw some bands. I was like, fuck, I forgot about it. And then, to answer the question about solo artists, it could be something we could do in the future, but when you consider somebody like, and this is a band none of us have in our top 10, but a definitely awesome band, Prince and the Revolution, because we think of Prince as a solo artist, but he could play guitar like no fucking anybody else,
Exactly. And this is when I was thinking about this. I was thinking about Prince and I was thinking about Elvis Presley, and I was like, I didn't add none of them on my list. But, you know, if you want to make an argument, I'd be like, well, Elvis is not really a rock band. He's more of a rock artist. And it's very debatable. It's very debatable. You know, I'm sure our fans, give us your thoughts on that specific thing. But I think rock bands, we're going bands, I think it should be about the band, not just the lead singer. Although most of our bands have great lead singers.
What was the easiest and toughest part about putting your list together? You guys kind of touched upon it, but if you were to say, like, what was easy, what was difficult?
Trying not to have everything focused on one era of music, one era of rock music. And also just kind of like what you said, you know, I would think about one band and then I'd think about like, well, who influenced that band? And it was like, okay, well, fuck. I mean, how could I not mention that band too? Like, or how can I not have that band in this list? You know, if I liked them as much as I do, and they were also a heavy influence on this other band that I just fucking wrote down. So that was again, all the props to anybody that does this. And we're, you know, it's a fun topic for us to come back into, like we mentioned, because we've been away for 2 weeks. And we love Watch Mojo. I love, you know, sometimes when we're any, you know, topic that we're doing, it's a good resource. And sometimes it also actually, you know, reminds me of music that I haven't heard in a long time, or a movie that I haven't seen in a while. You know, it's so I love that. And props to them again for making their list. This was tough. I thought it was super easy. We did this episode because we were like, fuck that shit. But when we tried to do it ourselves, it was you know, it turned out to be, you know, a tough decision to who not to put in this list and who to leave out and who wasn't, you know.
Yeah, definitely. That was a definite hard. The ranging, and then 9 through 12, like who needs to be in the top 10 and who needs to be on the outside looking in. So that was the most difficult part for me, because I pretty much had my top 5. I just had to arrange them because thinking about it, I've moved them around maybe like 20 fucking times. But that 9 through 12, man, it was extremely, or let's say 9 through 15 was really difficult. You know, there is 6-7 bands and there's only 2 slots for them, so it was pretty difficult.
Even putting the 10 through, or the 11 through 15. Even putting the 11 through 15, I was like, well, fuck, man, why don't I have this band in the 10?
It was, I think the top 3 to maybe the top 5 were easy. I was like, okay, now I just got to figure out the order. But then 6 through 15 was like, well, shit, there are so many great bands, and you got to consider this era and that style. And like you said, Joseph, who influenced who? And can you have that band without having this other band, which sold more records and was influenced by this? It was just, it was a completely just, you know, impossible thing to really get right. Let's see if we did get it right. But let me ask you this final question before we list our honorable mentions. One band, after completing your list, both the top 10 and honorable mentions, so top 15, what is the biggest glaring omission? What band did you struggle to keep out, and why?
I think I talked to Bob about this yesterday. And I was just going to mention it just briefly because of the situation
just
around him.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah. I was going to say, you know, I think Marilyn Manson's music, to me, I've been listening to that since I was in junior high. So I've always been a fan. I think his the albums that he's put out, the music is really great. I think it's the songs that stand, you know, that will last forever. Unfortunately, the situation around him is what it is, and so I'll just leave it at that. But also, Bob kind of threw at me when he was talking about yesterday. It's like, well, you know what? That's right. It's the band. I mean, he goes by his name, his stage name. So it kind of fell into that, like, what's his name?
Prince or
Bruce Springsteen or something. It kind of fell into that category. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Maybe I wouldn't have, even if there wasn't anything, you know, like going on about him, like I mentioned, maybe I wouldn't have included him in this list, because it is kind of more of a, even though he's got the band, he's not playing the instrument. So, you know, I had to. That one came to me.
That's a shocker. Despite I'm not a big Marilyn Manson fan, but that's a shocker. This is going to be a dope show. But go ahead.
I think that joke. Like you think of like Marilyn Manson, you also think of like Slipknot and how they kind of brought this like over the top heavy metal into the mainstream. You know what I mean? It wasn't just like a headbangers ball of rockers that liked their music. You know, a lot of athletes and a lot of, you know, people got into this music because they went mainstream with this kind of shit because of Manson and because of Slipknot. But my glaring omission, and this is gonna hurt me to say, because one of my favorite bands of all time they're in my top 3, or top 5 at least is Stone Temple Pilots, and they're not in my top 15. And I was trying to squeeze them in to be in my top 15. And I was naming bands. I was like, fuck, I have to put this band. I have to put this band. And I have to. And not just because they were on somebody else's list or on whatever. No, they're just, those bands were huge and influential. And if I could have, I'd have Stone Temple Pilots in my top 50. I'd have them in my top 10 if I could. But because they're one of my favorite bands of all time. But I couldn't. I couldn't squeeze. We're going to put them as 15 and a half.
Sort of justify, right? It's hard to justify.
Yeah,
I know we're going to talk about STP a little more later on, because there's a lot to unpack with Stone Temple Pilots that I want to talk about, but we'll get to them in a moment. Great pick, by the way. Mine is a band that I do not like, and that's the reason I kept them out of the top 15. But the Grateful Dead, who I don't like, other than Touch of Grey. I don't like any of their songs. Cocaine or riding that train high on cocaine, and I don't know. I can't name any of them.
They have the longest guitar solos ever. It's because you're not into the Dead. You're not a Deadhead because you don't smoke the Chiba. That's what it is.
Phil Jackson can't be wrong. I mean, you win 11 titles or whatever. But I don't know. Grateful Dead has their own fan base, but they're a band like Fish or a band like these, these stadium bands, these tour bands that their followers follow them everywhere. I'm not a Grateful Dead fan, but I do recognize that they are one of the biggest rock bands of all time. Sirius XM has that Grateful Dead channel that they've had for 10 years, and they never took it out, and it sucks.
Because their fans sit there and listen to it all day and all night, dude. There's nothing else. They're just hanging out.
I never have to leave the house.
Time, yeah.
I hear Jerry everywhere I go.
Jerry Garcia, we need you, man.
Who'd you buy it from? His brother Barry Garcia, man.
So we're gonna go on with our honorable mentions. I could go first, guys. We'll talk about our 15 through 11. For 15, I had AC/DC, 75 million albums in the United States. They were inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2003. Rick Rubin called them the best rock and roll band of all time. Bon Scott and Brian Johnson, guys, are probably the only two lead singers in any band that I can't picture singing for any other band. I can't picture them doing a duet. I can't picture them doing Islands in the Stream with Dolly Parton. That would be a disaster. I can't picture these guys doing anything other than being AC/DC singers. So 14, I had the Jimi Hendrix Experience, and I think that's an issue. We were talking about Prince and Bruce Springsteen. But they pioneered a new song. The Experience had Are You Experience, Bold as Love, Electric Ladyland. Number 13, I had the Foo Fighters, 15 Grammy Awards, including Best Rock Album 5 times.
That's another band I left out that I was fuck. I was trying to squeeze in.
A lot of people would say, well, it's too soon for the Foo Fighters, but they've been around since 1995. I mean, that's a long time.
Are they being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
They've been already.
Oh, they were, right? That's right. They were.
Yeah, a couple of years back.
Gosh, that's crazy.
For number 12, I had The Clash, ushered in the first big wave of British punk rock, sang about what was going on. They were news buffs, very in tune with the zeitgeist. And then for number 11, I had a band that I know you guys probably don't like. I had Pearl Jam, helped popularize grunge. They battled for cheaper ticket prices. They were a deep band. I love Pearl Jam. What is your biggest beef, Bob, with Pearl Jam? Let's get it off your chest.
Let's get up. First off, no. Second, you can't understand the dude half the goddamn time. I want to say, you have him as number 11, and this is not a shot at you in any way possible. But who do they influence?
Don't tell the pilots.
Speech pathologists in middle schools to get their kids to speak better, because it's God over the lead singer. It's not like I hate the band. I'm just not a fan of the band. Jeremy spoken, and I wanted him to shut the fuck up.
All right, Bob, let's go with your honorable mentions. Who do you got?
Gosh, all right. So 15, I had Van Halen. It's a band that I didn't even think about until towards the end. I'm like, there's no way I can leave them out, so I had to put them at 15. Number 14, a band that none of y'all have, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Just by the longevity of their music career and what they've done and how they kind of stay true and have their own little funky sound. I love that. Number 13, I have Guns N' Roses. You have to have Joseph's already shaking his head no. See, Guns N' Roses to Joseph is like Pearl Jam to me, Ren. So he's not a big fan of Guns N' Roses lead singer Axl Rose. Number 12, Aerosmith. I think leaving Steven Tyler off this list would be, it would be a real big shame. They put out a lot of great albums since the 70s and 80s. Then they had this huge hiatus and came back with a vengeance in the 90s with put out another couple of with Crazy Ones and they're awesome, man. And number 11. Now number 11 is a band that I had in my top 10 as number 10 and I bumped out to number 11 and I've been kicking myself over and over. I was even talking about it with my wife right before I walked over here to start the show. Like, I think I need to move them back in. I think I should put them back in. And it's a band I've made fun of on this show. But number 11 is Kiss. And I think that Kiss was a game changer. They brought this glam metal rock into the fold, and it was just more than just great fucking music with a great lead singer and a great guitar solos and basses. They put on the makeup, they put on a show, they let other bands realize like this is what performance art is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. I think they were huge, and I think they were extremely influential in the rock and roll and in music in general in the 70s and 80s. So I think that band, when you all find out who my number 10 is, you're going to be like, well, yeah, I would have gone with the other band too, but I think Kiss, highly underrated. And man, if one of y'all had them in your top 10, I wouldn't blame you.
They got a lot of good songs, dude. They're definitely on a list. They're definitely on a list, somebody's list. I mean,
once he took off that 10. Makeup, yeah.
It's hard to look at them anymore. I just had to listen.
What about you, Joseph? What are your honorable mentions?
I went with number 15. I had Slayer, another one of the thrash metal pioneers, one of my favorite bands. 14, I had Van Halen, of course. What haven't we said about? Mm-hmm. What have we not said about Van Halen? Clearly, obviously, great music from them too. I had AC/DC too as well, man. I had them at 13. Yes. Not so much the deepest of tracks, but clearly like great stadium. Yes. Anthem rock, just it never goes out of style.
Yeah, I'll go out on a limb and say they created the best hard rock guitar riffs of all time.
Yeah,
they're so grimy.
Riffs.
Yeah,
all guitar riffs, man, and they're so fucking amazing, dude.
One of my favorite stories, and rock gets passed down from generation to generation. And one of Bob's uncle, my cousin, one of my favorite concert stories is that when Bon Scott was alive, lead singer for AC/DC, the original lead singer, he got on the shoulders of a security guard and started walking through the crowd and started singing. And my cousin said he got on his buddy's shoulder and he was face to face with Bon Scott as he was singing. I'm sure it was bullshit.
Oh yeah, I'm more than sure.
He was singing to Bon Scott.
Singing to Bon Scott. What a fucking story to tell. Oh my
Great.
God.
Sorry about that, Joseph.
He told that story at like 3 a.m.
No, it's all right. I don't believe it, but where was I? Number 12, I had Alice in Chains. I had to include them on a list like this. I think great music that stood the test of time. Tremendous singer in Lane, but unfortunately, I mean, they're still together. I get, and that's kind of maybe why, I do have them on this list, but I know a lot of people there's a lot of people out there that will say like, no, this isn't Alice in Chains anymore. It's not Alice in Chains anymore. We don't have Lane. But you know what? I still dig them. They still have Jerry Cantrell. Jerry Cantrell sang, a lot of those songs too. He whether he was just harmonizing, it was that sound. And they still have him, and he's still, playing his, the guitar, and they're still good.
I met Jerry. I'm sorry, Joseph. I didn't mean
it's okay. Go ahead.
I met Jerry Cantrell briefly at Joe Michael, friend of the show, his bachelor party. We were in Dallas.
Were you on Joe Michael's shoulders too?
only at the urinals. We saw Spud Webb and Jerry Cantrell. What a fucking
Oh wow, that's
party.
Cool.
So
how does Spud Webb look in person?
Short. Yeah, short.
Like he look average.
He's kind of soft. Yeah, for the Valley, he's average. But
man, Randy meets everybody. He met Gavin Rosdale as well. At Circuit City.
But Gavin Rosdale got in his shoulders. That's the difference.
I'm sorry, Joseph. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Finally, at 11, I have Lamb of God, one of my favorite bands. These guys are kicking the door down, doing and I'll get to who one of their influences was later, because one of their influences is in my list. And they're just, I think they're carrying the torch, for this, for American metal right now. Metal listeners, and there's people that I listen to, and I read their articles about the different genres of metal and the history and the origins of metal. And, Lamb of God is on that list of you know, the new American metal scene. You know, countries don't mean shit to me when music. I mean, music is music. You can call it British heavy metal, American heavy metal, you know, Swedish it's all metal to me, and I love it. And so I don't, but I know that's what. I'm just saying that for context. That's, you know, what they're described as, why I have them, you know, on my list. I have them at 11, but, you know, I really don't give a shit about, you know, country and origin. Music is music. If it sounds fucking good, awesome.
Joseph,
yeah, when I had COVID, my voice sounded just like the lead singers.
I need you to explain a little bit more about Lamb of God, because they're, out of all the bands we're talking about 30 plus bands in the next 2 weeks. They were the band I knew least about. I mean, I don't have any. I don't have any tattoos or arrest warrants, so you're gonna have to like talk to me a little bit. I listened to them.
I don't have arrest warrants.
I listened to them.
Have you ever been on somebody's shoulder singing to Bon Scott?
If you wanted to get go ahead. Go ahead.
Just a simple question: Lamb of God in the metal world.
Who are they in the metal?
Yeah, who are they? Who are these? No, what do they mean in the metal? Because I thought they were okay. I could not get into them, but what are their influences? What do people think about them as a legacy?
As a legacy, so right now, to me, they're bringing along the torch that bands like Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth have been carrying for many years. Lamb of God is right there on the path with them. Far behind, a little bit behind, you know, obviously not, you know, up there where, you know, the greats like nobody would say that like fucking Lamb of God is better than Metallica. Lamb of God, yes, they are a heavy metal band, you know, with pounding guitar and drums, growling vocals. Although if you wanted some songs for some reference, I wish you had told me, I would have suggested some songs.
I did listen to.
Would have made you a mixtape.
They're not a Christian rock band like Striper, no. I imagine. Okay, yeah, all right.
And they're not a satanic worshiping band either.
Can I ask you this real quick, Joseph? How do they compare? Because we brought them up earlier. How do they compare with Slipknot?
I would say, although they are a hugely popular band, their mainstream success isn't as vast and as great as probably Slipknot.
So for those, in case this part doesn't get edited out, the internet connection was a little unstable, and Joseph was on hour 3 of talking about Lamb of God.
Lamb of God.
And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to edit this shit, but this is not a Lamb of God episode, but we're moving forward. All right. So let's go
number 10. Let's go into number 10.
Okay. So the way we're going to do this, guys, as mentioned at the beginning of the show.
As mentioned.
As mentioned.
On cue, me and Bob.
As
mentioned at the top of the show, we're going to talk about Watch Mojo's top 10. So let's go with their number 10, Radiohead.
Aye.
What are your thoughts on? You want me? I'll start off because
go ahead, go for it.
I think Radiohead, they're not in my top 10. They're not in my top 15. I think they're fantastic. I think as an album band, I get it. As an album band, yes, absolutely. OK Computer, Kid A, The Bends, all fantastic albums. My problem is that I compared them too much to the other bands of the time. So if I have Radiohead, I want to list Oasis, I want to list Muse, Arcade Fire. I don't want to do that. So I sort of compartmentalize Radiohead a little too much. Maybe that's unfair, but that's why I didn't have them on my list. What about you guys?
Can I call them a great? Yeah, okay. Let's say they're great. I do like their songs. I do like some of their songs. I do enjoy the sound of some of their songs. I think they're not on my top 10. They're not on my top 15. I don't know where I would rank them on a list like this in general. If you had to give me like 50 or 20 or 30 or something like that, I'm not even sure I can kind of put them on that. For me, it's more so I understand them, and I've heard people talk about Radiohead like, just so great and all these great albums, and you said that you like their 2 albums. For me, it's more like I like maybe 1 or 2 songs from that album. I like maybe 1 song from that album. To me, they're not like, they're good. Like I dig the songs, but I don't think their albums are like fucking phenomenal. Like, you know, what Pink Floyd is. Yeah. Like, or like what Dark Side of the Moon was. And to me, to be honest with you, they sound like a doomier, melancholy Coldplay, and that's because Coldplay's kind
That's
of
exactly what I'm going for.
Coldplay's kind of like
melancholy Coldplay. Okay,
Melancholy Coldplay. Radiohead.
I mean-
somewhere the lead singer just fucking threw a glass against the wall.
his other
Coldplay.
eye opened up.
I do think they have some good songs,
York,
but
right?
I just like not enough for me to be like, God dang, of course they're on the list, you know. Bob?
Yeah. Joseph? Assman?
A couple of asses over here. Okay.
Gosh, almighty. So the topic, of course, is the greatest rock bands of all time. When I think of Coldplay, when I think of Radiohead, I love Radiohead, and I love.
You think of Coldplay, right?
I think of Coldplay, Melancholy Coldplay. That's going to be the name of my cover Radiohead cover band, Melancholy Coldplay. Anyways, I just don't see them like on the Mount Rushmore of rock and roll. When I think of rock and roll, the greatest rock bands of all time, you start rattling off names, and Radiohead's just not one of them. They have some amazing songs, and like Joseph said, I like one or two from this album, one or two from that album, one or two, and there's some great mood music, but I don't really consider it like great rock and roll, standalone rock and roll music. And you know, like Randy nailed it perfectly. They do kind of blend into the other rock bands around that time. Some of their music can kind of blend into the what you said, the Muse, the Arcade Fire, the
Coldplay,
Coldplay, yes. As mentioned, Coldplay. But yeah, I agree with it 100%. Radiohead, great band. Not in the top 15 for me.
I think you can't be a top 10 rock band if you have a clip on YouTube where you're playing your most melancholy song, Creep, at the MTV Beach House during spring break. Check it out. It's a fun watch. Okay, so we'll go with our top 10. I'll go first. I had Guns N' Roses for my number 10
You're
spot.
Number 10. Ooh.
Yes, Guns N' Roses, bullet point reasons. Raw energy. Glam rock was king, and Guns N' Roses took away from that. If you watch Welcome to the Jungle, there's a parody of, you know, Axl Rose teasing his hair, you know, pretending to be a glam rock artist when they were really just kick ass, just raw rock and roll, hedonism and rebelliousness. Inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in their first year of eligibility. I could only say that I would say from 1987 to 1992, Guns N' Roses was the biggest rock band in the world. Like Metallica's up there too. They were 1 and 2, 1A, 1A, whatever. But Guns N' Roses for a time, they were the biggest rock band in the world, and everybody had their album. Everybody was blasting them. Everybody was dressing and looking like them. If you loved rock and roll, I had them for my number 10. What do you guys think?
I am a fan of Slash. I really am. I'm a fan of the band itself, and part of that we hear that's sort of similar sound in Velvet Revolver. So I got no problem with that whatsoever. There's some times that when I would listen to them that I maybe had an issue with, like Axl's voice just wasn't for me. Like but I'm not saying he can't sing. I would have a hard time putting him on this list or any list in general, regardless of the numbers, simply because I sometimes his Axl's voice isn't for me. Like, you know, it isn't. I know you're going to say that about my.
Fair enough.
I mean, but a great band. I love, like, oh man, like great fucking songs, great guitars, great drums, great rhythm. I mean, it's awesome. It's just, you know, at times the voice wasn't for me.
It's just not your cup of tea. That's all right. I get it. I actually had these guys. I told you I had that big debate. The hardest part of it was 9 through 15 or 9 through 12. I had these guys in at number 10 for a while. One of my best buddies at work was like, Guns N' Roses. You got to have Guns N' Roses in your top 10. He didn't even mention, you know, like the obvious ones. He was like, you got to have Guns N' Roses. You got biggest band in the world. I go, yeah, but for like 4 years. But those are the best 4 years. Yeah, it was a great 4 years. Yes, I got you. And I think the longevity of it is something that if they continue to dominate and be this amazing influential band over more than just, you know, that they really did have a great 4 to 6 year span, and then they were good, but they weren't as big, and then they kind of fizzled like they do with Slash, one of the top 10 greatest guitarists of all time. So that really does push them forward. They did have a great band, great ensemble, great drums, great, you know, they had a really great band. And I not like Joseph, I really did like Axl Rose's voice, you know. They just, man, they had a little bit more longevity, and, you know, they had kept it going for a few more years, and they had really influenced the grunge era or something. I could really see them being in the top 10, but they just fell a little bit short for me.
Would you look at them more as the anti-grunge of the 90s? Not because I don't consider them grunge.
No, I don't consider
weird.
Guns N' Roses.
No,
I
they
consider,
weren't grunge at all.
I think they were just hard rock. They were like throwbacks, I think. That's why when you had all these bands like Poison and White Snake and all these glam bands, when Guns N' Roses came in, they kind of kicked the door down and said, hey, we're taking over this shit. And they did a great job. So, I mean, I think we all agree they're definitely up there.
Yeah, they're up there.
They just didn't have the longevity. They had a lot of controversy. Joseph, we'll go on to your number 10 as your dog scratches his nuts. Oh, wait, you have a female dog.
Oh, jeez. She's licking her aforementioned.
Jesus Christ.
Go ahead. He had to mute everybody because his dog was making noise back there. Anyway.
You know what? This one's for you, Bob. At 10, I could not keep these guys off my top 10. I picked Stone Temple Pilots. I put them at top 10, and I'm more specifically, I'm saying the Weiland era because I know they're still kind of doing their thing. I know they're still touring. I know they got they're on their third singer, I believe, or second replacement singer. I could not put them on a list like this whatsoever. And I kind of, when I was, putting this together, I was like, I have to put them in this top 10. I just don't know where. And so that's kind of what came into the play is like, okay, where do I have them? And then I'd hear I'd put another band. Okay, well, that's kind of going to push Stone Temple Pilots down a little bit, but they could not leave the top 10. And that's where I had to settle them. Look, the commercial success is great because, some people say that's important, but I really don't care. Like somewhere along the lines of, I believe it was like 40 million records worldwide. They had 16 top 10 singles. That's cool. Really, really great. Which 8 of them peaked at number 1. One number 1 rock album, Purple. That's awesome. I just think that, despite them, I know early on, which I read, what I couldn't believe, they were a little bit unpopular, but, a lot of people have come out and said how they regret those fucking opinions of them that they had early on, because when you go back and listen to the songs and listen to the music, and I know, your band is only as good as as good and as charismatic as your lead singer and your front man. And I think that Scott Weiland was that he was, I think I've mentioned this before. He was a bridge to me. He was Bowie and Jim Morrison put together, singing hard alternative 90s rock, and I thought it was perfect. I think that, like I said, I'm talking about the Weiland era, and I don't want to go too far because we still got 4 more bands to talk about. I think they should have called it a day after 1 after his death, most definitely, but 2 after they kicked him out, because I think everybody since then has just, they're just trying to find somebody that sounds like him. I know Chester has his own signature. He had his own signature voice, but at times he was doing his best to, sound like Scott. And the guy, I don't even really remember his name. The guy currently, who their lead singer is, sounds just like him. Just trying to sound like Scott. So I think they should have continued on, just as a different band. But I couldn't keep them out of this list. I got them at top 10.
Well, thank you for calling my loyalty into question now, Joseph. God damn it. Coldplay is the only one with the melancholy now, Joseph, you fucking jerk. I agree with a lot of what you said. Man, I wanted to have them in my top 10. I always think of influence. I think of influence as being one of my big factors. And I think they were a very cool alternative band, and they were very unique. And when you talk about like frontmen of 90s bands, you got to mention Scott Weiland. He was just one of those that stood out. And I really do love the band. I'm not going to argue with that. You have them in your top 10. That's fucking cool, dude.
I honestly and Joseph, you and I have been to a Stone Temple Pilots concert together where we sat next to Sweet Jimmy, the world's nicest.
I think
pimp.
Bob was there too. He just went with us.
Yes. I love STP. I think they're amazing.
Sweet Jimmy.
I think Weiland is incredible, but I don't think they ever found that next level footing. I think they uprooted from being where a lot of people considered them Pearl Jam ripoff or whatever, and a second tier.
How dare you?
I think a lot.
Randy's just looking for fisticuffs tonight.
Not my words. Just it was said at the time.
I know. But
they never kicked it into that next gear. I think they were almost there. They're like Dermot Mulroney when they should have been Paul Rudd, is what I'm trying to say. I think Big Empty is one of my favorite songs. It's as good as any song as most of these bands have put out. The Crow soundtrack was phenomenal, and I think that was the best song on the soundtrack. Their biggest hit, Interstate Love Song, was I mean, it was rock, but it was sort of like that safe rock. And I felt that they took that route a little too much for the mainstream. They were too late for grunge, too early for post-punk. And I think they were kind of in limbo. I love STP. I can't say I love them as much as both of you guys. I think they're awesome. But I also think with Weiland's problems and the fact that they never found that niche, I think they could have been a lot bigger. I think they could have been a top 7 or 8 band if things would have worked out for them.
A simple wrong would have sufficed.
Jerk. Bob,
no,
okay, go ahead.
no, it's cool. Yeah, I think their music has stood the test of time, and that's a huge factor in any list like this.
Who'd you have as number 10, Bob?
Okay, speaking of longevity, this band didn't have a very long career, but they definitely had the influence. My number 10 is Nirvana. I couldn't leave them off this list. I had a big debate about where exactly they should fall, but I do think they were the biggest grunge band of the 90s. I think they were mainstream. I think Kurt Cobain was one of the best frontmen and best singers of that little era, that decade. I think they really changed the way the mainstream heard music and the type of music, and getting away from all this happy glam metal shit that we had in the 80s and kind of go into this different era of Seattle grunge. And I really do think that they deserve to be in the top 10 list. I just really do feel. I don't need to go into like album sales and how many albums. I mean, you think rock and roll, you think greatest rock bands, Nirvana's got to be mentioned somewhere in the top 10.
Gary?
I think with them, give them 2 more albums, I think they would have been a top 5 band. I have them on. I have them on my list coming up. But were they too era specific? Because they're all grunge, where you could listen to, say, a band we'll list later on, where they go out throughout the years. They're not really era specific. They're lower profile. I know Cameron Crowe wanted Imodium, which became Breed in the single soundtrack, but Nirvana was against it. So they weren't putting out their songs for commercial use after when Kurt Cobain was alive. When Kurt Cobain died and Courtney Love took over the I guess you could say the management of the songs.
She needed money for drugs.
So there's this dichotomy of them not wanting to carry the flag of being the biggest band in the world and trying to establish all these anti-establishment gradations. And I just think that Nirvana gosh, their 3 albums, I'd put them up against anybody's 3 albums. But the problem is some of these bands had 8, 9, 10 albums and were across decades, and Nirvana unfortunately wasn't, and we know why.
But we'll say this. Sorry, just the 3 albums they did put out, like the first. I mean, they were fucking amazing. Mm-hmm. Like, we mentioned Radiohead, and you're like, this album there's like 1 or 2 good songs. The next album 1 or 2 good songs. I mean, they had albums where the entire album was just fucking amazing. So I think that helped them stand.
Never mind, it's probably front to back. I mean, I know I can listen to that front to back. So I know that's, if you can do one of those, if you at least want to have one of those in your category of albums or recorded, then I think that definitely puts you on this list. I do have them as well somewhere along the line, and we'll get to that when I get to it. I think what you did cool. I think Bob cool. Like for you, I don't know. I kind of had this thing like maybe my STP 10 is your Nirvana 10. So it's just like a comparison. And it's cool. Like how can they not be on a list like this?
Speaking of the list, let's move on to number 9. What did Watch Mojo have as their number 9?
They had the Beach Boys.
Oh man, Beach Boys.
I mean, I'll just say this real quick about the Beach Boys. I think they're one of the best bands in the world. Yes. I don't think rock when I think the Beach Boys. I think surf, fun music. I think, I can't listen to them when it gets below 78 degrees. I mean, so that's my only argument. Phenomenal band. Brian
Which means you listen to them all the time.
Here in Texas, yes. Yeah. But I just couldn't categorize them as a rock band, and that was my only gripe.
I'm with you. I'm not going to even say anything about the Beach Boys because you said it perfectly like that. Like, I think they're one of the greatest bands of all time, but I don't think of rock when I hear the Beach Boys.
Greatest rock bands? No, I think they're a fun rock band. I think they're cool. I think they got some fun songs and they're nice to listen to at certain times in the day and in the season. But I don't know how they fucking came up with put them on number 9. That's just crazy.
I think they went for sales and longevity when they weren't thinking about pure rock. And by the way, I have a fly that's bothering me. So if you see me doing this, I'm not trying to cut you off. I'm trying to, get this fly.
I was already getting angry. I was this close to texting Bob right now. This motherfucker's trying to hurry me up.
We'll go on with our number 9 picks. I'll start off. The Ramones. I thought the Ramones influenced the rise of punk. Quick, catchy songs. Their songs sounded chaotic, but they were so smoothly orchestrated. The first true punk band, inspired as many bands as the Beatles. They inspired Nirvana, Metallica, the Misfits, Green Day. I remember an old boss of mine said he went to a Ramones concert. He said it was over in about 40 minutes because all their songs were 2 minutes. And they played song after song. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they went into another song. I love the Ramones. I felt that they were very much... To me, the Ramones are like Allen Iverson, like where Allen Iverson is appreciated by this era's young generation of basketball players. He wasn't really appreciated during his time because everybody thought, hey, he shoots too much, he takes over the game too much. But I think the Ramones are the same way. I think they're appreciated more now than they were in the 90s and early 2000s. Now that they've all passed away. But I think I love listening to the Ramones. They're quick, they're fun, and they're a great band. What do you guys think?
Very influential when it comes to the punk rock scene. Again, talking longevity. I'm not talking about longevity. I'm sorry. Talking music and albums, and Blitzkrieg Bop, and there's a couple of really big songs, right? But then the other ones, they're all kind of like fast and similar, and that'd be the only knock on them. But extremely influential. I have no problem with them being in your top 10, top 15.
Very, very influential to the. I don't listen to punk's not necessarily. One of my favorite genres to listen to. I was like we mentioned in a previous episode, I really liked Green Day, first couple of albums. I do like some Rancid and a lot of these. So the punk bands that I do, or the punk music that I do listen to, which is not much, but the ones that I do, clearly one of their major influence is the Ramones, and I wouldn't have those songs to listen to if the Ramones weren't doing what they were doing.
Exactly.
The Ramones they're not super deep, but great feel good songs. Like I mean, they get you moving.
They make you bob your head, tap your toe.
But I think above all, for why they belong on a list like this is their influence on the later stuff that we were listening to. It's just highly undoubtable.
Yeah.
Great feel good songs like the KKK Took My Baby Away, Beat on the Brat. I mean, you just love those songs. They're great songs. Well, let's just keep the order. Joseph, who'd you have at number 9?
At number 9, I had ZZ Top.
Oh, nice.
I'm okay with this pick. I'm
really good with this pick. Since you mentioned it, now I feel even more like an asshole that they weren't in my top 15.
I had to have
them written down.
They're not pioneers of blues music, but I think their influence on a lot of some of the one of the genres that I listen to in metal music is groove metal, which takes a lot of its influence from blues. One of my favorite guitarists from Lamb of God, Mark Morton, one of his influences is Billy Gibbs. I think we've talked about him at length of what a tremendous guitar player and sound that they have. I think they took, I obviously they didn't take blues and redefine it, but they kind of made it their own, gave it that little twang. They're from Texas, so got to have a little bit of country, but they're not country, obviously. So, but they gave it their own little, flow, and that influenced music that I listen to this day. It's really, really awesome. Can't not have this band on this list or on my list. So that's my number. What was that? 9?
9. Yes.
9. Good pick, man. I love ZZ Top. We've talked about them nonstop. We had our own special episode about them after the passing of Dusty Hill, and they're just one of my favorite. They're one of my dad's favorite bands, so instantly became one of my favorite bands.
I grew up listening to a lot of their 80s stuff. So to me, ZZ Top was one of those MTV bands. They're a lot more than that. I mean, they're in the 70s and just listening to ZZ Top from my cousins, like your father, Bob, your father, Dad, your father,
Father,
Bob,
Dad,
father, Dad, from your. And then just really listening to their old stuff, which they really just kicked the fucking doors down. I did like the 80s commercial stuff, but the only reason I don't have them in my top 15, I think of them very MTV era specific. They're more than that. I know that's probably not a great thing for me to say. Blues and soul, but I'm okay where you position them. I have no argument about that. Excellent.
Good pick. Number 9. I got my number 9. Now this one I saw on a lot of lists. Number 9. I saw them very high, very, 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 very high. I think where I put them, I think it's in the right spot. My number 9 pick is
wait, you saw them high?
I saw them high. They were high in every concert. I went with the Who. The Who at number 9.
You high?
I feel like probably. I feel like that's the right spot for them. You can't have a rock list without the Who. And I saw them like at number 3 in a lot of lists, or number 4, like in the top 5. And I'm like, no way. I know they have Bob O'Reilly, and they have like Pinball Wizard, and they have My Generation, but then what else? And then I forgot they had Love Reign Over Me. They had Behind Blue Eyes, You Better Not. They had Squeeze Box. They had Magic Bus. They had just The Seeker. They had so many great fucking big hits, and they were all awesome, very 70s centric rock and roll. And there's no way I could have left them off this list. And I think at number 9, it's the right spot for them.
Half those motherfuckers are now deaf, so yeah, they fucking rocked.
They rocked. Yeah,
they rocked. They can't hear anything. 2 reasons why I didn't put them on my list. Some of their songs were too long. I mean, a lot of keyboard fills. I mean, I get it. Some of these songs you want to listen to for 7 or 8 minutes. I think that instant gratification that generations come to be, where it's like we don't want 8-minute songs anymore because we want to sell more records and put more records on the album. And the Who was one of the last bands that had these extemporaneous, these long songs going on in their albums. Some of their songs sounded very medieval too, so they were well read and probably too smart for some of the other rock bands that were around by then. I don't have a problem with the Who being a top 10 band. I think a lot of people would agree with you. I mean, awesome band, great pick. What do you think, Joseph?
I understand their legacy and their history in rock music and that era specifically, which is the more 60s, all right? 60s
and then 70s.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know they had a lot of
70s,
a lot of stuff in the 60s, a lot of the songs that I really like from the 60s. So what more can you say? Great songs. I specifically like that this is debatable, but Boris the Spider, probably one of my favorite songs because it's supposedly one of the earliest uses of the death growl, the quote unquote death growl for death metal. If you know that song, Boris the Spider, go check it out. There's the main line where they sing Boris the Spider. This is supposedly one of the, so the Who is like, yeah, they mean something to me. And I love that song. And I love the fact that, people point to that song and, the other great songs. I'm just looking for something a little more rockier, I guess. And, I think these songs are a little looking for, and so, but of course they're going to come out on these lists.
That's fine. I get it. It's the fighting words.
Should have gone with Whoa Black Betty, Ramalam.
I think
we're not arguing here, guys.
Not yet.
So, damn it. For number 8, Watch Mojo had U2. To me, great fucking band. I have them on my list.
U2. Okay,
Can we say move on to? Are we on 8 now?
We're on number 8. Yes.
Okay, we're going 8.
Yeah, we're on number 8. For number 8, Watch Mojo had U2. Can we save the U2 talk from when because I have them on today's list. Let's hold on. Let's
hold off on it.
Okay.
Great pick. Yeah, let's hold off. Yeah. What did you have for number 8, Rand? So we could just jump into that.
Yeah, for number 8, I had Nirvana, which you talked about before.
Cool. So, yeah, that's a good pick. 8 to 10, I had them at 10. You had them at 8. I think, shit, man, anywhere from 6 to 10, there's zero argument for me, man.
I think with Nirvana, just to put just a capper on my thoughts, I think they completely obliterated what was mainstream, which was rock and roll. They took punk, they took hard rock, and made it the most popular genre in the world. Normal everyday guys. Today's youth, they don't wear Van Halen shirts, they don't wear Aerosmith t-shirts and their other contemporaries. They wear Nirvana t-shirts. They killed the 80s. The one thing I will say, we did do a Nirvana episode, which was great. The only thing I regret, I think we went a little too much on Courtney Love. I asked some questions and said some things that I really wish I didn't say and ask. But other than, the whole thing that happened with Courtney and Kurt's drug use, could have been a bigger band, but I mean, they have a special meaning for me.
Yeah, I mean, what more do we need to say about they've come out twice already on this list. So I think the placements is just going to be based on your preference, where you think, and I think a lot of the question is the main thing with you two right now at this point is longevity. That comes into play, and maybe I know for Randall, the commercial, making music for that. They didn't let, the masses, not wanting to make music for the masses, even though it ended up being that. I mean, because they were great songs. Good spot on the list, I'd say. If you, like Bob said, if you got it, for me, kind of different. If you got them on a top 10 list, I'll just say that. I think you're not wrong wherever you put them on a top 10 list.
For my top 8 pick, or my number 8 pick, I actually had a band that we mentioned already too. I had AC/DC.
Yes.
I don't know how we could have a top 10 list without having I mentioned it before, the most iconic hard rock, heavy metal riffs of all time are all made by AC/DC, man. They put out so many great songs, so many great albums. It's hard. I mean, it's really, really difficult, man. You hear Black and Black, you hear, Thunderstruck, Highway to Hell, Long Way to the Top, Dirty Deeds, TNT, Jailbreak. I mean, they have so many great, great fucking songs. And every song I mentioned, I guarantee you, if you like rock, if you listen to rock and you're into that kind of music, at least most of the lyrics, or at least the opening riffs to every single one of those songs that I mentioned. So they deserve it. I think they should be at 8. I think 8's a good spot for them. What do y'all think?
I like AC/DC a lot. I had them in my top 15 honorable mention. They did something that a lot of bands that would have obliterated a lot of bands. They lost Bon Scott, who was their backbone. I mean, a one of a kind lead singer, and they came back strong with Brian Johnson, who sounds. And how did they? I mean, Brian Johnson sounds a lot like Bon Scott. And how did they replace one lead singer who sounded like a cartoon Attack Vulture with another one that sounded exactly the same? I mean, these guys just rock. They're just all about rock and roll. I mean, it's not about commercialism. It's about putting it out there. The only thing I have against AC/DC, the only strike is their lack of drums. And that's a criticism everybody has. AC/DC's drum fills, their drum play is very rudimentary. But I mean, I love them.
Can I just say this? I was reading Twitter the other day, because you mentioned drums. This will be quick, I promise. And somebody posted something like, if you've ever listened to Def Leppard and you air drum with both your hands, you're going to hell. I just want you to know that. I was reading it. That was fucking clever. If you ever listen to Def Leppard and then the air drum, but with both your arms, you're going to hell, bro. Okay, sorry. Joseph, what do you think? AC/DC, number 8.
Good pick. Of course, I already had them on the list, so I had them at 13 on my top 15. Like I mentioned, great rock songs. Like I believe I don't want to call them stadium rock, but god dang it, they just sound awesome in a stadium, at a football game, a basketball game, soccer game, whatever you want to, baseball, everything. They just sound good. They get you going. I mean, they can really, it's pump, psych up music. It really is, to me, to be honest with you. Who fucking doesn't love Money Talks? It's a great song.
It's a great song.
When you have a guitarist like Angus Young, man, he can pretty much play anything, and anything he plays is fucking amazing.
My number 8, I have Pantera.
Yeah, there we go.
I got Pantera. Yeah, dude. I'm again going back to my list. My list has to have Pantera as one of the greatest rock bands of all time. This is I had mentioned earlier when I was talking about Lamb of God. Pantera was, have been called one of the pioneers of the new wave of American metal movement, which was, again, I don't like the labels of like countries, UK metal, new British metal. Like, it's just fucking metal. Bands just happen to be where they're from, and that's it. It's all good. Doesn't matter. But I mean, the influence, and because you all know the genre of music that I listen to, a lot of them I would not be able to listen to if it wasn't for Pantera. So it's music that I like, yes, but I have to thank a band like Pantera for doing what they did, for inspiring the bands that I listen to. Their influence on heavy metal music is massive, notably for bands like even the new metal bands that people call new metal bands, like Korn and Limp Bizkit, but specifically the Slipknots, Hatebreed, Lamb of God, like I mentioned you. The list goes on and on. I mean, the bands like this will always talk about Pantera as being one of their influences and the sound that Dimebag Darrell created in his guitar. I love Phil Anselmo's vocals, just gritty grime. They're not always screaming, but just a kick in the face. I don't know how to describe it. And Vinnie Paul's pounding drums and Rex Brown. I think it's cool that they're, what is it, 2/4 of the band are reuniting with Zach Wild and I can't remember his name from Anthrax. On drums. No, he's into the drummer. To go on tour and play songs, Pantera songs, do a reunion type tour, and I think that's so fucking awesome. It's great I didn't get to see Pantera when I was younger, and if I have a chance to go see these Pantera songs performed live by 2/4 of the band featuring Zach Wild, a great guitar player in his own right, I have to try to go, and I am going to try to go. I'm sorry. I know I'm getting too. I'm talking too much about them.
So
I really like this band. I have them at. It was kind of hard to place them, but I put them at 8. I've always loved their take no shit attitude. It's just one of and just real quick. Anselmo once said, and I love this quote by him: "We survived every fucking trend: grunge metal, funk metal, rap metal, and we're still here. We put everyone on notice that we don't fuck around. Our fans know we're true right down to the fucking core." And that speaks to me, man. I love it. Anyway,
y'all can see Joseph standing up and like throwing punches in the air while he's reading that speech.
While I was saying that in my head, all I have is "Revolution" is my name in my head. Sorry, go.
This pick for me makes sense for me because Lamb of God didn't make sense for me. Lamb of God is a great band, but I don't think that they should be anywhere near in the top 15 bands of all time. But you mentioned a band like Pantera and how influential they were and how long they lasted, and a lot of the big musicians and bands that we really like, they mention Dimebag and Pantera and how much that their music influenced them to create whatever they've created. So I think this band belongs somewhere in the top 10. You want to have them at 8? That's cool with me. If you had put them at 15, that would be great for me. If you had put them maybe top 5, maybe I wouldn't agree with it. But if you want to put them in the top 10, 8 to 10, I'm all with that, man. I think they were a big time heavy metal band that had more than just heavy metal followers. They had rock fans as well. So it's a good pick, man. It's a good pick.
I think a lot of rock and roll purists would agree with you, Joe. So I definitely think they're in the top. They're a great band. I don't know if I put them in my top 20, but they would linger maybe a little past that. I kind of feel like that scene in Pee-wee's Big Adventure where I go into the bar and a bunch of like bikers so what I'm about to say, I apologize to anybody who likes Pantera. I mean, they're a great Texas band. I think Pantera walks so bands like Lamb of God could run. I think Walk, Cemetery Gates, I'm Broken, This Love, Cowboys from Hell, Domination. I love those songs. My question is that were they only one speed, or were they? I mean, I don't know, Joseph. Maybe there's some slower songs I'm missing out. Maybe. I mean, I just don't think there's a lot of versatility there. I think that all their menu was all main course, is what I'm trying to say. But I
wouldn't call them slower. I would call them more grimy, slowed down.
I shouldn't say slower. I think it's a bad word. Yeah.
I think did they have like ballads? Absolutely
ballads or something that's
but they didn't. Nothing. It wasn't always like. But see, one of the things too that I talked about with Lamb of God and when I mentioned ZZ Top and this groove, this quote unquote groove metal genre that has a label that some of these bands get put into because they take a little bit of the blues and they apply that to their metal riffs. And Dime did that. He wasn't just fucking like, speed and loud. No, he added some twang to it and some slide and grime, and he pulled the strings up and he would make it
follow the vocals too.
Exactly.
That was really cool. And
so they weren't always like in your face punching you in the face through your ears, but they did have some slower tempo songs to where they wanted to I guess maybe slow you down in the pit, get you, so that groove metal thing is going to come into play. But yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, they're, to me, they're highly influential to everybody that I listen to. So of course I have to include them on the list.
Of course.
Before we move on, speaking of groove and influential, thank you, Chuck Berry, for rock and roll. We want to we really appreciate you.
Yeah.
You influenced the shit out of everyone that's probably on our list, guaranteed in some way, some fashion. So Chuck Berry, you're the man.
Okay, you're awesome, Chuck Berry. Other than that whole putting cameras in women's restrooms,
yeah,
you're
was
awesome.
fucked up, bro. Come on, man.
What the fuck's wrong with you, Chuck Berry?
What the fuck's wrong with you, Chuck? You're my hero. You're my life, Chuck Berry. No, yeah. Why you always gotta go down a different route? Why do I go down a different route?
Sorry.
He was awesome, and then cameras.
This is your cousin, Marvin.
Marvin Berry.
So, number 7, Watch Mojo had Metallica. Now, let's move on. With my number 7 was actually Metallica. Now, I think what you guys are going to think is that this is too low for Metallica. I think you guys probably have them higher. But I'm going to say, along with Slayer and Anthrax, they developed the subgenre speed metal in the early 80s and all the way through, the mid 80s. I'm obviously a sucker for rock bands that develop and enhance this subgenre. And as of 2017, Metallica is the 3rd best-selling music artist since Nielsen SoundScan began. So you know that they're selling albums, they're selling records. I also think Metallica being higher on this list can be attributed to recency bias because of the Stranger Things resurgence. I went into a Barnes & Noble, I think a couple of weeks ago, and they had a Stranger Things like display. Like they had the books, they had CDs, and they had Master of Puppets on there. And I was like, why do they have Master? I know why they had it, but it didn't make sense for them to put the whole Metallica album, Master of Puppets, on a Stranger Things display. So I think the resurgence might move them up. I think it's still too early to tell, but I think number 7 is a good spot for them. But argue with me, guys. What do you think?
I'm gonna give my argument once I get to where I have them on my list. Yes, I have them lower. Okay. Joseph, I believe you have them lower as well. I will say this. The recency bias has nothing to do, as far as me is my concern. This is a band that's influenced a shitload of bands. It has the longevity. It has the number 1 hits. It has the different styles and genres of music. They play ballads. They play hard rock. They play heavy metal. They play the blues. I don't want to go too far into it, but I feel like they should at least be in the top 5. Let me just say that.
Okay, fair. Joseph?
If the criteria, look, when Watch Mojo put their list together, because I mean I don't want to go into it too much too, like Bob said, because they are on a list. So I think we can reserve some of that for later, and I don't want to get too into why I have them where I have them, because I would just be repeating myself. They are most definitely on any top 10 list by any publication. I don't care who you are, and if for some reason you don't have them on a top 10 list, you are fucking insane. They had them. They had.
Say you glib.
They Watch Mojo has them at 7. I wouldn't call that a bad spot for them. Just like I don't call it a bad spot for you, Randy. I'm not saying it's a bad spot to have them in. Me and Bob just have them somewhere else. But considering the fact that Watch Mojo has the Beach Boys and Radiohead included in this list, 7 is is for their list, not for you, Randy, because you haven't, your bands aren't like, too, like, the bands that you've chosen so far aren't like Radiohead and Beach Boys, where we don't see them.
You didn't mention Pearl Jam. I'm just gonna say that.
I love all those bands.
So for you, I'm cool with where you put them. I got no problem with that.
Yeah.
Because your bands are your choices so far are more appealing and more logical than having the Beach Boys and Radiohead in a top 10 list. So I don't agree with Watch Mojo's placement of them. But we'll get more into it later. I think it's a good spot for you, Randy. Of course, we've done Metallica episodes, so and we've talked about them at length. I don't know. We'll get more into it later, I guess.
Well, the way you feel about the way I feel about you putting Metallica a little too low on the list, Rand, is probably the way you're gonna feel about my number 7 pick.
I got it on my notes.
Yeah, my number 7 pick is Queen. Queen, one of the greatest lead singers and frontmen of all time, a great band with a lot of hits. They don't scream rock and roll to me, but they scream just amazing. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. They put out some great hits, some stadium fucking classics. We Will Rock You as well. I love this band, and I was trying to put them higher. I really, really was. I was trying to put them higher. I wanted them in my top 5. I originally had them like 3 or 4, and they just kind of slid down and slid down and slid down because of the other bands I have ahead of it. Hopefully, when I get to 1 through 6, y'all can see like, okay, well, I can see why you put that band ahead, and I get that. This band, I mean, they need no argument why they should be in anybody's top 10. They're one of the greatest bands of all time. Rand, I know you have your notes. Let's hear it. Let's go, buddy.
They're too low on the list. I'm thinking you're thinking of the Queen in Bohemian Rhapsody, the movie. Those motherfuckers should be number 7. These are the top.
You said the songs were too long for the Who, and then you mentioned Bohemian Rhapsody. That's all I'm saying.
But I'm going to talk about Queen when I have them listed. Spoiler alert, they'll be on next week's episode. But nice. I just think they're too low. I mean, when you consider Freddie Mercury, everybody in that band is amazing. I think this band just, other than the Flash Gordon soundtrack that they appeared on, I don't think they made any errors in their actual rock and roll career. I will talk more about them when I have them on, but I definitely think they're too low on the list. What do you think, Joseph?
They got a movie about them, so that tells you how influential and how big they were in real life. So personally, you got them at 7. I don't have them listed anywhere between 1 through 15, but that's just my choice. That's my taste. But I do see and understand why they are on lists like this. Some great music. It's very diverse too. That's another thing. Their songs aren't necessarily all the same, and I don't think that hurts them. They did what they wanted to do. Songs are deep. They're very. There's some songs that are like really like great, super, meaningful. And that's Freddie Mercury for you. So on a list like this, they're somewhere on Mojo's list, so that's cool. 7 for Bob. That's cool. I think I would have put some of your other bands that you mentioned before them, but that's a good spot.
Biggest stadium rock band of all time, I think, man. And
yeah, for sure. Live Aid, yeah.
Yeah, it's just they're amazing. If you want to have them higher, Randy, I completely agree. Joseph doesn't have them on his list, so that's something I'd probably be competitive about, but he can see why we have them, so that makes some sense. That makes some sense. Better than Lamb of God. That's all I'm gonna say.
Better than Lamb of God. Do you have anything else? I'm sorry.
No. I was gonna say, who's number 7 that we not hit?
Joseph.
Joseph, number 7, buddy. What do you got, John Elway?
Sorry, my number 7. I went with the Deftones. I had to talk about this band. One of my favorite bands. One of the most intriguing bands of rock music, I think, for the last. I think they've been doing this since the late 80s. So let's just say 90s. So let's say the beginning of the 90s. So 30 years now?
It's been 30 years.
Yeah.
Holy shit! How old are we?
Yeah. Deftones they're going to be to me. I think their sound is incredibly underrated, or to some. I don't think people give them the fair shake that they deserve, because at the time they were along the lines of the nu metal scene. And they were lumped into that, and I think people don't give them the credit that they're due for how great the drums are, the guitar parts, the lyrics written by Chino Moreno are so amazing and out there, and storytelling is amazing, and where he takes you when you're listening to these songs. But I think what makes them most interesting to me is it's like I said, they were lumped into this nu metal genre, but they're listed as mostly for the most part as an American alternative metal band, and I guess that's cool. But if you look at like the genres that they're lumped into, it's like alternative metal, art rock, experimental rock, post-hardcore, and of course nu metal. And they say that mostly early but that's what they came out with when they started. It's not their fault that they got lumped into it, but I do like, there was a great piece that MTV did back in the days when they did a little 10-minute segment on White Pony, when White Pony was coming out. At the time, the late great Chi Chang, the original bassist for the band, who passed away after succumbing to injuries from a car crash that he was in, he said during the interview that this type of music is so popular right now, and it would be real easy for us to just jump in and take advantage of that with this album. This is at the time when they were recording White Pony, their third album. And he said, we would rather do something that we feel comfortable with, that's true to us and different, and not do and I think that's at that point, like, people started to realize, look, the Deftones they're not nu metal. They're something completely different. I know I'm going on long. So I just think that because of they're so ever evolving with music, with their style, with the music that they put out, and the different types of genres that they take from. Chino Moreno is a huge fan of 80s pop. He takes a lot of that into his writing, into how he sings. He's very influenced with that. And you don't hear that a lot from metal bands, being influenced by like Duran Duran and Depeche Mode and things like that. So I think that's really, really fucking cool. And that's my 7. I'm sorry.
No, 7 minutes. I'm just kidding.
I've only done this a few times to specific artists.
I'm just kidding, dude.
Welcome to the Lamb of God and Deftones show.
I'm your host, Matt Pinfield.
I remember that episode. That was a good
great album.
Great album. No, that was a great segment on MTV. I think it was Kurt Loder.
Yes, I actually have it on YouTube. I was watching it earlier
when he was young, 59 years old.
Yeah.
But no,
it was a segment called MTV's 1515, and it was like a story that Kurt Loder did. Yeah. And they played clips from the albums. I'm sorry, go.
No.
You were saying.
I like Deftones a lot, and this is the problem with doing.
You've
these
seen
lists.
them with me.
I have that on my list. We saw them at the Sunken Gardens in San Antonio.
Great place.
Yes. And so my experience with that, we had a great time. It was Joseph, me, and a friend of ours, Rico. So we wanted to take a picture to commemorate the moment, and they took a picture, and they go, "You three, yeah." So when they took a picture, I got cut out of the picture because some dude walked next to Rico and posed with Joseph and Rico. So there's a picture of Joseph, Rico, and like a third stranger who walked into the photo, and I'm cut out.
So, we didn't realize you were part of it.
I mean, the Deftones to me are like a great band to listen to when you're like 16 to 20. I mean, there's a lot of youthful energy and discovery. It's like a getting into stuff band. Like you're out driving with your friends, you're out meeting a girl or whatever. That's the Deftones kind of vibe. I don't listen to them as much now as I did when they were on my MySpace page, but they were a great band for the era. I do have a lot of great memories with Deftones. And what's tough about it is that I don't have them anywhere on my list. I don't have them in my top 15, but I do appreciate their artistry. I think they're a great band. And if we did an episode of the most underrated rock bands, I'd have Deftones on there. Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, I can agree with that 1,000%. Definitely an underrated rock band. This is me when it comes to Stone Temple Pilots, Joe. So this is my Stone Temple Pilots wanting to throw them on there and not finding the way. I think that's what you did with the Deftones here. Your favorite band of all time, or at least one of your favorite bands of all time. And I think you squeezed them in. If you had them in your top 15 honorable mentions, I'd be all into it. Having them at number 7 might be a little too high as far as all time. But again, personal preference. I can't push that enough. Everybody has their own personal preference when it comes to music. So there's going to be a shitload of people out there that are going to be 100% all in on Joseph and being like, yeah, the fucking Deftones should be in the top 7 rock bands of all time because they're X, Y, and Z. And there's going to be, another half of people that are like, no way they should be, mentioned, or maybe they should be in the top 20, whatever the fucking case is. I think that because they're one of your favorite bands, or if not your favorite band of all time, you wanted to put them in there. And, that's cool with me, man. I'm not here to argue anything other than Pearl Jam. So that's good with me. I think if you had put them at like 11 or 12, I'd be 100% all in. At 7, I think they might be a little too high, but it again, your personal preference. I'm all good with it.
For number 6, Watch Mojo had The Who. I don't have anything else to say about them other than I think they're too high on this list.
Really?
What do you guys think?
I had them at number 9. I think number 9 is right where they should be.
All right.
Bob O'Reilly alone was fucking amazing. But I think number 9 is tail end of it is probably where they should be.
I can agree with for your list for most lists, like, 9. 6 is if you're putting the Who before Metallica, that's
I don't see that. I don't see that.
So we've already talked about them. They were in a good spot with Bob. I was fine with that. Our beef here. I think our beef here with we all agree, right? This is not where they belong on a top.
Yeah, I don't think
so.
They're number 6. I don't think they're number 6. No,
great band. Don't get me wrong.
Yes,
but yeah, 6 is.
We're not arguing that. We're just like, it's crazy. 6. The Who before Metallica? Are you fucking kidding me?
Well, for
there's some Brit that's gonna listen to this and be like, "What the fuck do you know?"
You're all fur coat, no trousers. You are,
Mr. Deftones.
So for number 6, I had U2. So
shit!
This is
Who was right where they should have been. No, I'm just kidding.
So the only problem I have with U2, first of all, they had the same
fuckers.
They had the same lineup since 1976. You can't say any other band has had the same lineup for that length of time and have been that successful. 22 Grammy Awards, more than any other band. Edge is one of the top 5 or 6 guitarists of all time. U2 have released 14 studio albums and are one of the largest selling best-selling music artists and have sold an estimated 150 to 170 million records worldwide. Their longevity and success is unparalleled. The anthems, the sonic sounds, the influence of Ireland, they can truly rock. Now, here's my only issue with U2. So you go to a U2 concert. By the way, they put on an excellent concert. But Bono's soliloquies, I remember I was at a U2 concert in Houston, and they started playing the intro to Where the Streets Have No Name. And you're like, oh, yeah, this is going to be a great song, one of my favorite U2 songs. And Bono goes off in this soliloquy like, this one's for the starving children, the mothers, the fathers, the doctors, the lawyers, the school crossing guards, the cafeteria workers. And he just keeps on going and going. And I'm like, dude, get to the fucking song. And then he's like, oh, yeah, also for the concert ticket goers, the people in the stands, the people who came in to play general admission. And then all of a sudden he starts going into like, hey, the streets have no name. I'm like, dude, you missed the whole fucking first stanza. Dude, you owe me half of the streets where the streets have no name. You cheated us out of half a song to thank the fucking cafeteria workers. So that's the only problem I have. I think Bono is a little too political. That's me saying that, right? He's a little too into his own ministry. And that's the only problem I have with U2. Other than that, I love him.
At least I know what Bono's going to sound like when he's like 76 smoking a pipe in his home. U2 is a great band. And now I want to mention this because I think this is worth mentioning. This is the first time tonight, I believe, anybody in our top 10, we've mentioned somebody other than the lead singer. And I think that's pretty important because we're talking about the greatest rock bands of all time. And I think mentioning other band members that are just as popular as Bono is The Edge. Even though, he does play a really cool guitar, hits a lot of buttons, got a lot of sound effects, uses a lot of pedals. He's different. But mentioning The Edge and Bono, like now we're getting more well-rounded bands. And like, they're a great band, not just because of the lead singer and the lyrics, but because of their guitarist, because of the type of music they put out there. So I think that goes a really long way. You're going to see in the other bands that we choose in our top 5, they're all going to be. Did I do Irish? In our top 5, we're gonna see bands that are like, it's not just the lead singer, it's the guitarist, it's the drummer, it's the bassist, it's there's going to be a lot more to them than just the front man. And I think you got to give it some points for U2 for having such a great guitarist and a lead singer. Are they number 6 for me? No way. Are they top 10 for me? You might be able to convince me that they could be number 10. Maybe top 15. I feel would be a lot better. They'd had some major hits. Now, the only thing that I think the thing that pushes them back, Ran, and maybe you can argue otherwise, I don't see the influence. I don't see Metallica saying, you know what? I need to make an album that sounds like a U2 album. I don't see any other rock bands trying to sound more like Bono or The Edge or like that sound. You know what I mean? I could see if you want to say, well, a lot of bands put out ballads, but yeah, they did very good with ballads. But I think that's the only thing as far as influence is concerned. I think that's where they kind of fall short for me. What do you think, Joseph?
For me, I'd have to say that Randy, well, I'll ask you right now. What Bob said about me putting Deftones at 7, about how yes, they are one of my favorite bands. So it's kind of a preference thing. I think that can apply to you, Randy, here with your placements. I do recognize the longevity. I think, having that lineup for as long as they have, that's really cool. I know they've put out multiple albums that have done well, even the ones that we didn't ask for, that showed up on our iPads for no reason, that we couldn't get rid of, that are still there for some reason. Yeah, but I do like some U2 songs, so I'm not gonna say like they're shit. I think I'm more of the With or Without You sound, as opposed to It's a Beautiful Day. And man, dude, Randy, just real quick, I want to say, I wish you all could have seen Randy get into character with that impression. I mean, he
put on his pink sunglasses and went to town.
Well,
but real quick, I can agree. I can understand their placement on lists like this. If they're on a top 10 in a publication like Rolling Stone, Spin, Revolver, well, maybe not Revolver, that's more of a hard rock album, but magazine, but I can see it most definitely. Put it, and I can see them being in the top 15, like in a Rolling Stone publication or something like that. I think like I said, you're a fan of them, I believe, right? I mean, you went to go see them.
Yes, I am.
So I think that factors into you're putting them at 7 as well. This is six. I'm sorry,
yeah.
6. So because I like some of your other bands, and I think they're better than your other choices. I think they're better than you too. I don't have them on a 15 for me. I don't have them anywhere near that. But that's my preference. But I understand.
Well,
the spots.
You guys talked about influence, and I know U2, they influenced, bands like Coldplay, Keane, Snow Patrol, Oasis.
Great rock bands.
I like them. I mean, rock is different for everybody. I think a lot of people are listening to and saying, well, U2 is not like, they don't rock out like Metallica. They don't. But rock is such a broad genre, and U2's success, their album sales, where they're categorized and what they focus on and their longevity, I think is the credit to their success. And
if Watch Mojo can have the Beach Boys on at number 9, you could definitely have U2 in there.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Going on, Joseph, who'd you have at number 6?
For me at 6, I had Tool. I have Tool.
Oh, okay.
I know that's probably going to be a wrench, a wrench in the list to some people, but no pun intended. Exactly. I think Tool is an extremely influential band to, like I said about the Deftones, who yes, they have their sound, and it's might be a specific sound to some, but I believe, but the songwriting is so. Yes, there's some complexity in how they write their songs, in the drum tones and whatnot. But to me, it's awesome, and I think the singer Maynard James Keenan is highly incredible songwriter, a very distinct voice that that we've heard people today. There's bands that get compared if the singer sounds like. They're like, oh, he sounds like Tool, he sounds like Maynard. But I can't necessarily say his voice is so distinct, but because I've heard other people try to imitate it, but it's very good. Like, I don't know, it just flows well. And I think a band like Tool, for me, why I have them on a list like this and I have them at 6, is because of they might not have the longevity, but that's because that's their choice. They are still together. They are still active. They only have 5 albums and they're spaced out, but 5 albums is actually a lot. So, but I think a band, what adds to my point for this is a band that released an album in 2019, 13 years after their previous album, can show up, be released, and be number 1 across the board is just simply amazing. After 13 years and be number 1 above the likes of of like a Taylor, because I remember it was a huge story. Like Taylor Swift was like, they're like, why is Taylor's? And then her fans were freaking out, like, and there was all this like shit online. It's like, who the fuck is Tool and these old guys, and how can they be number one? Like they were losing their mind. I just think that's fucking amazing, and it adds to why they deserve to be on lists. I know this is my list, and I have them at 6, so I'll leave it at that. I don't know if you guys would ever put them on a list, but that's my.
I think that they're one of the best rock bands of all time as far as that genre is concerned. That metal rock they do Maynard into what definitely has a certain sound to it. They're extremely popular. They have hit their, like I said, that whole thing with the album and beating Taylor Swift was pretty fucking rad. It's so different considering what kind of music was extremely popular at that point in time. Again, your personal preference of music. Would I have had them there? No. Would I have had them in my top 15? Maybe 15 or 16, because I'm generally a big fan of Tool. If Randy can have you two, you can have Tool. Go for it.
Real quick, I just want to say, of their 5 albums, 3 of them peak position number 1. One of them was peak position number 2. Only their first original release, Undertow, peaked at number 19. After that, Anima was number 2. Lateralus was number 1. 10,000 Days was number 1. Fear Inoculum was number 1. That's pretty fucking cool.
I think you make a great case for that, especially after saying the album and the positionings and all the stuff that they've influenced. Their videos were like a satanic Sesame Street. They're a great 2 a.m. band, not 3 a.m. That's Matchbox 20. But what I mean by that is that when you end your night and you turn on MTV when they used to play videos or VH1 or whatever, if you caught Tool like at 2 a.m. after a long night out, what a great way. You put on a Totino's pizza roll or whatever, get a beer, listen to a few Tool albums or some Tool videos. Great band to finish your night with. Pure originality. You know you know what you're getting with Tool. You know they could change it up. Great classics. What I like about Tool is that they sounded like not like your average metal band where it was just loud and fast. It was like rhythmic. It made sense. It told a story.
Technically, they are progressive metal. That's what they're described as. But
I think it's a good category.
I hate genres. But I mean, no, I understand it. I mean, I just genres are just names.
I do like Tool a lot. I think another underrated band. I think you've hit 2 in a row where these bands have not been as talked about as they should have. So good pick. I don't have them in my top 15, but I do like Tool a lot. Bob, who'd you have at number 6?
All right, to end off the night, number 6, I had to go with one of my favorite bands of all time. And when we talk about influence, I think that there's no other band that could touch this as far as this scene or this genre is concerned. I went with Black Sabbath. And Ozzy Osbourne. So Black Sabbath is my number 6 pick on my list. They are the originators, bringing psychedelic rock and this doom metal, dark metal, this different kind of culture to the mix. Where mothers were afraid of their kids listening to this type of music. Oh, you don't want to listen to that kind of stuff. It's a bad influence. They brought this cool sound, this new sound of metal. It wasn't just straight up, at that point in time, it wasn't the Led Zeppelins, the Who's, and that kind of stuff, the Beatles. It was completely different. And this is where Tool got its influence. This is where Lamb of God, this is where Pantera, this is where the Deftones, this is where heavy metal originated from. If it wasn't for Black Sabbath, I don't think that we'd have this type of genre of music. What they were able to come up with in the 60s and 70s be Heaven and Hell, Sweet Leaf, everything that they did, even when Ozzy branched off and did Mr. Crowley, No More Tears, just the type of music and the creation of this genre. I know Joseph hates genres of music, of rock music, but they created this whole fucking genre, man, and I think it set the tone for the rest of the decades, especially the 90s and 2000s, where metal became this became this big thing where a lot of bands were jumping in on that style of music. What do y'all think?
I think with Black Sabbath, if I have any regrets of not putting a band in the top 15, it's Black Sabbath. And I didn't want to change them once I saw your list and say, well, I'll sneak them in there in the top 15 and just sort of act like I didn't have them on there. But you're absolutely right. Great influential band. I think once Ozzy leaves us in about 47 years, we're going to say that these guys brought in a style that was unparalleled, that nobody had listened to. Like you said, we're not old enough to remember when Black Sabbath was, big. We're just not old enough, but we know the stories. We've read the history. These guys were metal godfathers. They were godfathers of rock. They were influential. They were damn talented, and all around just an all-star team in one band. So great selection. I don't hate it. What about you, Joseph?
I'm sorry, but I won't go too much into this because I have them somewhere else on this list, and so I kind of, and there's some things I want to say on why I have them where I have them on this list, so I don't want to talk about that too much. Like Bob mentioned, highly influential in a lot of the music that I listen to. Genres, again, we're going to talk about that. The quote unquote doom metal genre is a personal favorite of mine, and I know that genre of music is highly influenced by Sabbath. Bands like 10,000 Mods, bands like I can't name them off the top of my head, so let's just cut this out. No, right. But I wanted to be genre specific to bands like that, so I'll cut that. Well, maybe we will. Yeah, but anyway, but that whole like scene that I like, just this gloomy, it's Sabbath. I mean, it really is. It's Sabbath for the new age, and they don't do much to different them, from themselves from trying to sound like Sabbath, and that's cool with me. I'm fine with it. I know people might not like that, but I dig it. But I'll get more into your placement. You have them at 6. That's cool. I got them further, along the way, and we'll get to that when we do the next portion of this. But they're most definitely on any fucking
I honestly I had them higher. I really did have them higher, and it was just a real battle. That 3 through 3.
You don't have
6.
them on a 10. You don't know music at all.
Hey, I don't have them. I have them at number 17 behind the Grateful Dead.
I'm fucking with you. I knew you were going to say.
And like with Randy's pick, like
you two, get the fuck.
The Edge. What does the Edge know about Tony Iommi? God damn it! Oh shit! Oh man!
Zing!
This is a great topic, man. Great topic.
Great. Any last words, guys?
I think I hope that people have if they're following along, and hopefully they're just not completely cussing out every selection that we've made. I hope that you've gone to go try it yourself, and I hope that you've realized how incredibly difficult it actually is to do this, because you're going to find yourself in the same situation. You're going to be leaving out bands that you really liked, but you couldn't have in the top 10, and you're going to be questioning your position of the top 10. So I really hope those of you that are following along with us, like I mentioned, please, send us your top, your 6 through 10. We would love to see it, and we'd love to compare it.
For sure. Bob, any last words?
No, that's great. Yeah, I can't wait to just stick with this guy. I can't wait for next week's episode when we talk 1 through 5. That's going to be a whole lot of fun.
It's going to be great. And that's our show, everyone. Listeners, we'd love to hear from you. Hit us up and let us know your top 10 list, or at least 10 through 6 to compare to our list that we mentioned, that we spoke about today. Most importantly, let us know what you think about the show. You may reach us at formidableopponents@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok by searching for Formidable Opponents. Join us for next week's episode. Oh, by the way, thanks to Creative Little Pill for awesome artwork. And join us for next week's episode for part 2 of Top 10 Rock Bands of All Time. We'll be covering our selections for bands 5 through 1. So for Bob, Joseph, this is Randall. We'll see you all next week.
I want to rock.